Yay, we're starting. Hi, everyone coming in. You know the drill. If you're new to us, though, and you don't know the drill, while you're hanging out waiting for this to start, tell us who you are. Where are you coming to us from? And our special, super special icebreaker for the August Rise Up webinar is, what is your absolute dream job? Like, absolute dream job. Like, this job does not have to exist, as you'll see with my job that I put on my slide, introducing myself. But if you could literally have any type of job in this entire planet, what would it be? So put those in the chat. Tell us, again, who you are, where you're coming to us from, and what your absolute dream job is. And then we'll get started pretty quick. I was thinking about also playing music, and then with the recordings, I was like, oh, and then I'll get like so copyrighted. So I was like, maybe I'll perform something. No, I'm totally kidding. I'm totally not going to perform something, but maybe I'll find a way to maybe I'll mix my own songs and yeah, use that for the entrance next month. Okay, we have some people coming into the chat. That was kind of a little song. Shantae is from Canada. Okay, you're gonna have to help me, Shantae. Hematopathologist? Is that, okay. Also, Shantae, please put that in the, like, what that is. Please help me out, because I don't know what that is. Who else? Laura from Long Beach. Hi, Nicolina. A vet. That was actually my first dream job, is a vet. And then I went to a vet and saw what they had to do, and then didn't want to be a vet any longer. So I have so much appreciation for vets. Callie, figuring out creative ways to work with you to save critical habitat for endangered species. Done. If you haven't, check out Callie at Reserva, the Youth Land Trust, because she's doing it. Maggie, hi Maggie, she wants to be a marine biologist. And Taylor, a therapist. That's so cool. Hi Isabel, a molecular gastronomist, to find more sustainable food sources. Ooh, or an ice cream taster. Okay, I'm really glad Isabel put an ice cream taster, because then you'll see what I put, and then I won't feel less. I'll feel more in the group. Oh, Sarah. Hi, Sarah. She's from Colombia. An actress, a soccer player, and an environmentalist. I think you could be all three, actually. So I'm gonna be looking for Sarah from Colombia, and I hope that they are all three of those things, and study music. How cool. Shelby O'Neill wants to live, she's from California and live in the middle of nowhere while having access to animals just to live life, aka no job. So relatable. That is so relatable to me. Natalie says, mine would definitely be a zookeeper or a zoologist that works in the field. That's cool. Oh, Shantae, thank you so much for the explanation. I would not have known what, I guess like hemo, or hema, I guess that prefix is blood. So diagnoses diseases and disorders of the blood, AKA has a great lifestyle. Marina from Sao Paulo, Brazil, an astronaut. That is what my partner wants to be more than anything. He is a math teacher, but he wants to be a astronaut, like, so bad. A zookeeper. You guys keep these coming. This is awesome. I love talking about dream jobs because I think that's something, you know, we're asked a lot, like, what do you want to be? Or what do you want to be when you grow up? And you always, I feel like, have to answer very serious things. And I was never that person. I told people for a while I wanted to be Bindi Irwin, which is not a job, but could be a job. So thank you all for being here. Thank you so much for taking time out of your Wednesday day or evening, wherever you are coming to us from, to hang out with us. I have a really, really amazing special guest that I'm super excited about this month. But I did want to go ahead and introduce myself and welcome you to the August Rise Up webinar. I'm very excited for this month's theme, which is reaching drawdown, you know, what you can do to reverse global warming. Going to the next slide. So if you're new, then you don't know who I am. And if you aren't new, then hopefully we're friends and going to hang out after quarantine together. But my name is Bailey Ritter. I'm originally from Pontiac, Illinois. But see, now you guys like make me feel not bad because you guys had some really great answers. But I think my dream job would be a professional vacation tester. So I would take vacations, I would try out vacations for people before they went on the vacation. So like I would do anything from tropical vacations to like, you know, more wilderness hiking vacations. The only caveat to this dream job is that I would have to find some way to have some sustainable travel. So that's the only thing, kind of the only barrier, the only barrier I would say to me becoming a professional vacation tester is that I don't know how I could, maybe I'd sail or like bike. No, that's bad. I would have a solar powered car take me to places around the US and then take a boat like Greta to other locations. So I'm youth coordinator for the Ocean Project, but I really will only be the MC for this next 45 minutes to an hour, because this time is really learning about what reaching drawdown means. And so I want to introduce my guest. This is Dr. Elizabeth Bagley, and she will, there she is, yay! And her dream job, and she'll tell you where she's at currently. I didn't want to give it away on the slide, but her dream job is a professional gear tester for outdoor gear. And she gave me a hilarious little like explanation to it. So she can give that, but I thought that was such a brilliant answer.
Oh my gosh, Bailey, it's so good to be here. And oh, thank you. I have lots of new dream jobs thanks to all of the people on the webinar. We need to live lots of lives to get to do all these fun things, or just, you know, try different things. I always think about what are the kinds of problems I like to solve, right? Because a job is really about solving problems. And so when I landed this job at Project Drawdown, I was like, yes, these are the kinds of problems I like to solve. I like to think about climate solutions. So, but I also would not mind testing professional gear. I mean, come on, like I can go hike a mountain and tell you if the boots work really well, or I can, you know, put on a rain jacket and be real tough with it and see how it goes. And those jobs I think do exist. I'm just not like a fancy outdoors like athlete person, but I would love to do that. And so I don't know, we'll see. Maybe in my next career will be that, Bailey.
Yes, for sure. I know, I was gonna say, and I'll tell you a little bit about Elizabeth and all of the many exciting careers that she has, but she's coming to us from Alaska. Which is like so cool. It shows you kind of the weird power of technology that I'm here in Chicago, and you know, she's just casually in Alaska living life. When we came on, she was like, do you want to see the mountain outside my window?
It's just right there.
I was like, oh yeah, sure, I'll show you my parking lot. Like, so it's really cool to have Elizabeth on with us, but I'm so excited, especially for this webinar. We have kind of a cool connection that I'll explain as we get going, but a little bit about Elizabeth before she starts. Dr. Elizabeth Bagley designs experiences, initiatives, and tools to connect people with researched, relevant, and relatable. Say that again, researched, relevant, and relatable, the things we need, information about the most impactful climate change solutions we can take to help people and our planet thrive. But before joining Project Drawdown, Elizabeth directed sustainability efforts at the California Academy of Sciences and designed the science content for video games and books at Leapfrog, AKA the things we all had as kids. Like, that was where I first got some of my science knowledge, is Leapfrog. So cool. She's an experienced environmental educator. Elizabeth taught middle school, actually, and high school science in Louisiana, K through 12 pedagogy to teachers, and science communication to graduate students at the University of Illinois, Champaign-Urbana, which is kind of close. We've been loving reminiscing about living in the beautiful state of Illinois. And so she'll get to tell you a little bit about Project Drawdown, which I hope you guys will love and check out. But I kind of wanted to talk about my really kind of cool full circle moment to this webinar. And that's, I actually read and learned about Paul Hawken, who is the founder of Project Drawdown. I read Drawdown when I was in college, and my teachers had courses, my professors, so I went to DePaul University, had courses on this book. And so actually a funny kind of quick anecdote is one of my professors handed out for homework. It's a speech from Paul Hawken called "You Are Brilliant and the Earth is Hiring." And my teacher assigned that as reading. And so that little QR code in the corner, if you see it, that's actually a link to the commencement speech if you want to check it out. But this quote, it was the only piece of homework in college that I actually printed and reread and handed it out to my friends at like in between classes. I was like, have you read this? This is like life-changing. And I wanted to read you a quick quote before Elizabeth starts, because I think it's really stuck with me and it's something that I want to kind of share with you all. But the speech goes, a little section of the speech goes like this. You are brilliant and the earth is hiring. The earth couldn't afford to send recruiters or limos to your school. It sent you rain and sunsets, ripe cherries, night blooming jasmine, and that unbelievably cute person you're dating. Do what needs to be done and check to see if it's impossible after you're done. So that line has stayed with me, I mean, ever since college. And it's really such a pleasure to have this conversation with Dr. Bagley, but also kind of share this moment with all of you. So without further ado, I will stop sharing my screen and let her take it away.
Oh, Bailey, thank you for sharing that. It is such an honor to be here and chatting with all of you. And I think those words that Bailey shared from Paul Hawken are just so right on, like remembering to ground ourselves in what the world needs and to keep moving, right? Like do what we love to do, help the earth in all the different ways that we can help the earth and reach what we're going to talk about today, which is Drawdown. I'm happy to show you the mountain. Stand by, folks. We'll start with that, Bailey. You mentioned the mountain. Okay, hold on. We're going to have to do a little, oh, it's a little foggy. I don't know if you could see it. It's just over the top of the tree. We're in a temperate rainforest. I'm coming to you from Sitka, Alaska, which is the ancestral land of the Tlingit. So Tlingit are a Native American tribe, and this place is just full of incredible history and indigenous knowledge, and I'm really grateful to be in this space. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start sharing my screen, folks. So here we go. We're going to do share screen. We're going to go pop up to this one, and we are going to start showing you some slides. All right, are we good with the slides? Great, we're gonna start here. And thanks again, folks. Thanks for taking your time to think about climate and think about solutions related to climate. And I wanna start us off by inviting you to answer this question in the chat. What comes to mind when you think about climate change and global warming? Go ahead and put that answer in the chat, please.
Oh yeah, we're seeing some good ones. Shante says greed, Cali biodiversity loss, natural disasters, sea rise, relocation. Yeah, urgent measures for sure.
You know, what's interesting about that, Bailey, and for everybody else on the webinar is that this was an actual question that was asked to 14,000 people around the world. And when this very question was asked to those people, 44% of the people talked about a lot of the things that you just mentioned. They talked about outcomes. They talked about things like changing weather, melting ice caps, the fires that we're seeing in California right now. So that's 44% of people, almost half of them, right? Another 18% of those people said that they think about the causes of climate change, things like the burning of fossil fuels like coal, oil, and natural gas. And only 3% of those people who were surveyed, remember there were 14,000 people from all over the world, only 3% said that they think about solutions. So if you weren't thinking about solutions, you are definitely not alone. And what I want us to think about is the real incredible opportunity here that we have to start a conversation about climate change so that we can work together in our homes, in our communities, in our workplaces to really put solutions into action. So my hope is that after this conversation, solutions will be one of the first things that come to mind when you think about climate change and global warming, because I know all of you are already doing really important work in your communities. And I want to give you that nudge to keep going and maybe think about new ways that you might want to work on solutions in your communities. But you might be wondering, what in the world are the solutions? Where do they exist? Well, boom, here's an unreadable chart for you to look at. And this unreadable chart is here for you to see that there are loads of solutions. And that question of like, are there solutions to the climate crisis? What can we actually do? That's the question that led to the formation of the nonprofit I work for called Project Drawdown. And we are the world's leading resource for climate solutions. In 2017, we came out with that book that Bailey mentioned. It was a New York Times bestseller. And that book, Drawdown, really started to shift the conversation from a place of doom and gloom and hopelessness to a conversation about solutions and hope and yes, we can, related to climate solutions. And our latest publication came out in March. It's available for free on our website, drawdown.org. Highly recommend that you check it out and download it. And it's really an incredible resource that helps us understand the most impactful levers that we can all pull to really start to reach something that I'll talk about in a second, which is drawdown. But I don't do this alone, and I just want to be really show my gratitude towards lots of people. These are just some of the research fellows who have worked with Project Drawdown over the years. We have a whole research arm of these fellows who scour the landscape to find the most impactful solutions that are in hand today, not things that are 10 years down the road, but things that we already are doing today that we just need to scale up that can help us reach drawdown. So what in the world is that weird word rather? Well, drawdown indicates the future point in time when the levels of heat trapping gases, y'all have probably seen this curve before, when the level of heat trapping gases in the atmosphere stop climbing, boom, right there, and start to steadily decline. That is the moment of drawdown. And that is really a crucial turning point for life on Earth. And it is one that we need to reach as quickly, as safely, and as equitably as possible. But you might be wondering, how in the world do we get there? How do we achieve drawdown? Well, to figure that out, this harkens back to my science teacher days. Let's think about all of the aspects of the climate equation. So we're going to start with the gray box, and we're going to call the gray box the atmosphere. And we're going to imagine that in the atmosphere, we're looking at all of the heat trapping emissions or the heat trapping gases that humans put there. But you might be wondering to figure out where they come from. They come from 6 big buckets. They come from the ways we use and produce electricity, our food, agriculture, and land use, industry, transportation, buildings, and then we have other energy related emissions. So what's amazing is that we know where they come from. So in theory, we should know how to stop it, right? We should be able to turn off that faucet. But thankfully, the story doesn't end here, right? We know we've got a bunch of stuff going into the atmosphere, these heat trapping gases that create this thick blanket around the atmosphere. But thankfully, nature does us a huge favor. And nature removes about 40% of those heat trapping gases out of the atmosphere. And for those of you who really care about the ocean, and we know it's especially with this group, hopefully all of you do, we get about 17% of the heat trapping gases that humans put into the atmosphere absorbed by the ocean. So thank you, nature, for having that natural sink. And we have about 24% that are absorbed by the by land sinks. And we're going to talk more about what those actually mean in a minute. So this is nature doing what she does best. But 60%, here's where the math comes in, about 60% of those heat trapping gases are left behind. And that creates that thick blanket around the planet. And that thick blanket is what causes all of those challenges that we're seeing related to climate change. So knowing where the heat trapping gases come from and where they go can help us identify this suite of climate solutions so that we can implement them and reach drawdown. There we go, back to the connection with drawdown. So here we go. We can start by thinking about a framework for climate solutions. And we start with what I call the 3 S's. So the first S is sources. These are the same categories that we just saw going into the atmosphere. So let's reduce those sources. Let's get rid of them. So let's think about electricity, food, agriculture, and land use, industry, transportation, and buildings. Let's also support sinks. That's the second S. Sources, sinks. Let's support our land and our coastal and ocean sinks. And our third S is society. Let's make sure we help society achieve broader transformation. So this, my friends, is the drawdown framework for climate solutions. These are 3 interconnected areas for action. And we need to pursue this globally, simultaneously, and with determination. Today, I'm going to provide you with an overview of climate solutions that are in hand now, today, to reach drawdown. Bailey, do we have any questions? You want me to pause here and take a breath and see if anybody has anything?
See any questions yet, unless somebody wants to pop one into the chat quickly. But if you guys,
I'll awkwardly take a drink of water.
Yes, along the way, if you guys do have questions for Elizabeth, please put them in the chat or in the Q&A. That will be, yeah, we can ask them at the end or during. Everyone has your PowerPoint.
Oh yeah, great. Well, I was going to say some of these slides that I'm just showing you now are all available. Ooh, sorry, there's a loud chair. All available on our website, drawdown.org. So I think, I don't remember the exact URL, but these are there, and you could see our fancy copyright. We just ask that you give us credit so that people know where they came from.
Yeah.
But we're happy for you to use them.
That's awesome.
And a lot of the other images, just as a pro tip, because I just learned about this, I got a lot from Flickr that are Creative Commons, and oh, it starts with a U. I just forgot the website name. Unsplash. Unsplash has, again, like free Creative Commons gorgeous images, and all of my pictures should have the attribution information about where I got them. So huge pro tip, just to make beautiful presentations. I've been fortunate enough to be able to use Unsplash and Flickr. So those have been great resources. All right, so moving on, we've got the drawdown framework for climate solutions, and we want to reach drawdown. And we really want to begin to come back into balance with the planet's living systems. These solutions that we have in hand today are tools of possibility in the face of a seemingly impossible challenge. Widespread awareness and understanding of climate solutions is vital to kindle agency and effect change worldwide. And people and institutions of all kinds, in all places, have roles to play in this great transformation. And the solutions that we're going to talk about today are really a synthesis of the collective wisdom and the collective action that are unfolding all across the globe. So beyond addressing heat trapping gases, climate solutions can have what we call co-benefits. And those co-benefits contribute to a better, more equitable society. Climate solutions are rarely just climate solutions. For example, those that curb air pollution are also health solutions. Others that protect and restore ecosystems are also biodiversity solutions. Many climate solutions create jobs. They foster resilience to climate impacts like storms and droughts, and bring other environmental benefits like safeguarding our water resources. Climate solutions can advance social and economic equity if they're utilized wisely and well, and especially if we pay attention to who decides, who benefits, and how any drawbacks are mitigated. I know that some of these monthly webinars have been really thoughtful about equity and environmental justice, and I just want to kind of underline many, many times the importance of how climate solutions need to be also social equity solutions. And it takes intention, it takes care, and it takes courage to move solutions forward in ways that heal rather than deepen the types of systemic injustices that are becoming so apparent and so visible in our society. And we have the opportunity and really the obligation to co-create systems that are safe and equitable, ensuring that both people and the planet can thrive together. So today I'm going to share some stories. I'm not going to throw numbers at you. I'm going to throw stories at you because we know that stories inspire, and these climate solutions, when put into place, help us move towards drawdown, and they help people and the communities that we care about. So we're going to start by diving into the electricity sector. So when we think about electricity, we might want to go all the way back to the emergence of electrical systems in the 1800s. That was a long time ago. And since then, society has created most of its electricity by burning fossil fuels like coal, oil, natural gas. And that locked up energy of those long buried plants and animals is turned into electricity as carbon dioxide spills into the atmosphere as a byproduct. So for each of the solutions we talk about today, this is what I'm going to show you. I'm going to show you, we call these, a very scientific term, are bubble diagrams. And these show you, there are two different scenarios in the drawdown review based on how quickly these solutions are adopted and implemented. So that's what the different colors of the circles mean, like the darker and the lighter. But what I really want you to notice about these is that when we think about electricity, there are three main areas for action, right? So one main area for action is around shifting production. And there's a whole lot of ways that we need to shift production, which is pretty awesome that we know that. So when we think about, okay, I really care about working on solutions that focus on shifting electricity production. Maybe I want to focus on micro wind turbines. Maybe I want to focus on ocean power, right? Those are solutions that we've looked at, we've analyzed, and we've calculated the greenhouse gas reduction potential. Another area we want to look at is enhancing efficiency. How could we make sure that we're more efficient so we don't need as much electricity? And then the third area is improving the system. We need to make sure we improve the electrical system so that we're not losing loads of power along the way. So you're going to see the bubble diagram. And today I'm not going to be able to go into all of them, unfortunately, but I invite you to check out the drawdown review where we go into depth with each of these. Today, I want to focus on a story happening on the Navajo reservation. So I'm going to take us to the Navajo Nation in New Mexico, Arizona, and Utah, where 15,000 homes lack access to electricity. And families living there use kerosene for lamps, they burn wood to cook, both of which we know add heat trapping gases to the air and cause health problems for family members. So to tackle this inequity and the source of emissions, a group called Native Renewables works to empower Native American families to achieve energy independence by growing renewable energy capacity and affordable access to off-grid power. Native Renewables connects Native American homes and communities with clean energy by building partnerships, by seeking cost-effective solutions that will reduce fossil fuel use, and by supporting economic development and growing technical capacity. So through this work, not only are heat trapping gases reduced, right? There's this co-benefit where there are now 15,000 families with access to clean, reliable electricity. What a fabulous climate solution. I'm going to pause here for a second. I saw some questions come in and see. Okay, the infographic. I will find out where the infographics are. I don't remember exactly where they live. So I will find out where that is. How can we encourage students, people to think about multi-level solutions working in combination with each other and encourage to take ownership in local communities without people feeling like they are bad or guilty of something? Okay, so hopefully the talk and the stories will touch on some of that. My opinion is that guilt is never a great way to get people to do something, because then people are doing it out of guilt instead of actually a true desire to do that. So I always think about how can we start with values and what we all care about, right? What are the things that we have in common, that like, what is that better future that we want to build together? And how can we find the people who are aligned with us to move in that same direction, right? It might look a little different initially, but how do we put that how do we create the future we want by working together? So hopefully some of these stories will inspire that question. Will actually answer that question and add a little bit of inspiration about just some unlikely partners who have come together to put some pretty cool work into place. So one of those is actually focused on the food, agriculture, and land use sector. So when we think about food, agriculture, and land use, we think about addressing food waste and diets. We think about shifting agricultural practices, and we think about protecting ecosystems. And I'm going to start by talking about what I sometimes call the world's dumbest problem, which is maybe not a very nice way to say it, but it's also a super solvable problem, which is amazing, and that is food waste. Because a third of the world's food is never eaten, which means that land and resources used and the heat trapping gases emitted in the producing of that food were completely unnecessary. So food waste is absolutely a solvable problem, and it's a problem that can be solved through innovative partnerships. So here's an example of Joe Richardson in Frederick County, Maryland. He read about Project Drawdown's climate solutions, and he decided to really bring together partners around reducing food waste and increasing composting. So here's a picture where Joe brought together students at the local high school that you're seeing them sorting out food waste. He brought together Frederick County, a composting group, a Rotary Club. He brought together funders, school officials, key compost, and most importantly, the students to take action by sorting out food waste, liquids, and recyclables in 13 Frederick County schools. They weighed the waste to measure the impact, and they had the food picked up and composted off-site. They then turned their work into the Lunch Out of Landfills toolkit so that their work wouldn't just be in their world, but would be able to be scaled all around the world. So they are not slowing down, and I highly encourage you to check out their Lunch Out of Landfills toolkit if you want to learn more about how to get started. When we think about other climate solutions related to industry, from concrete to computers, cars to clothing, industry is the sector of production that makes all of them. So from our research, we find that the chemicals used in refrigeration are really potent heat trapping gases, and those gases unfortunately often leak during use or disposal. So I'm going to take us now to City Waste Recycling in Accra, Ghana in West Africa. And that organization mostly focuses on recycling plastics and metals, but they also store refrigerants from old equipment. So imagine that there are, old refrigerators or air conditioners, and they've got these canisters of things. One of the trademark names is Freon. You might have heard of that before. So they've got all these boxes you see in this picture of Freon just hanging out. And those canisters start to leak. And that's a humongous problem, because what they realized in Accra was that if those unused canisters of refrigerants were released into the atmosphere, that would hold the same amount of heat as the carbon dioxide emissions from burning 16 million gallons of gasoline. That's a lot. And that's that's a solvable problem, right? So the refrigerants can be incinerated in special kilns, and that breaks the molecules into a benign mixture where they no longer trap heat. But there are no disposal facilities in West Africa. So the problem was really financial. Well, at the same time in Chicago, where Bailey is, there was a company called Tradewater who was developing a business based on being able to sell carbon offsets. So some of you might have heard about carbon offsets before, like if you go on an airplane ride and you want to offset the emissions from that flight, you can pay someone, let's say, you can pay an organization that will then invest that in tree planting. Well, Tradewater does it slightly differently, and they decided to work with this group in Accra, Ghana, and sell offsets to destroy refrigerants. But first they had to find a buyer. And after reading about the drawdown solutions, they found that buyer in Intuit, the makers of QuickBooks and TurboTax and Mint and all that kind of stuff. And you might be like, why in the world did they care? Well, they wanted to offset all their emissions, and they said, you know what? Here's a great way for us to do that. So we've got these unlikely partners again, right? We've got City Waste Recycling in Ghana, we have Trade Water from Chicago, and we have Intuit, which is kind of global, headquartered in San Diego, and they came together. And so in addition to Intuit being able to buy carbon offsets, they also spurred a new market. And because of that sale, Tradewater was able to continue working with City Waste Recycling in Accra, and they swept up the remaining refrigerants in Ghana. They then went to Costa Rica, and now they're working in the US with Rotary clubs, which is kind of amazing. So I could go on and on about this story. Something most people have never heard of are refrigerants, but a huge heat trapping potential and some great solutions when people start to think kind of creatively. So moving from industry into transportation, we know how incredible transportation is, and mobility has played a critical and complex role in shaping society, and the demand for it is only growing. However, most of the energy driving mobility has been generated by burning gasoline, diesel, and jet fuel. So when we think about transportation, we think about shifting to alternatives, enhancing efficiency, and electrifying vehicles. And one of the things that many of us live in cities, and bicycles offer an alternative to cars and fossil fuel transport, especially in those cities. But in order to really make places bike friendly, infrastructure is essential for supporting safe and abundant bike use, which then cuts emissions. But sometimes that infrastructure is put into place without really considering some of the most vulnerable members of our community. So thankfully, cities around the country are really integrating adaptive bike sharing into their bike share infrastructure. So this is a photo from Detroit's program, where by using the same pickup and drop off point, and they keep it staffed, users can leave behind their wheelchair or their mobility device, and they can pick it up after their trip. So these programs have seen a range of users, including people with disabilities, caregivers, riders who are not comfortable on two-wheeled bikes, riders with injuries or illnesses, and those just interested in trying adaptive cycling. So another solution of just making bike share accessible can really create more robust support for cycling investments in cities. It can increase accessibility for people with different ability levels and potentially improve the health outcomes for residents, all while reducing those heat trapping emissions from transportation. And the last of the sources that we're going to talk about, remember the 3 S's, reducing sources, are buildings. And buildings are a major driver of emissions, from the materials that comprise the buildings and the process of construction, renovation, and demolition. We call that embodied carbon. And many more emissions are the result of ongoing use. That's where we focus on energy efficiency. So when we want to focus on enhancing efficiency, I want us to go to Buffalo, New York. In Buffalo, New York, it is a city filled with old houses that challenge their residents with high heating costs that are generated by long and demanding winters. I didn't see anyone from Buffalo, but folks, it's a long winter up there. It's not unusual for a heating bill to come in at the same or even higher amount as rent for the month. And so hundreds of area residents are working with an organization called Push Buffalo, People United for Sustainable Housing. And they're working in efforts to weatherproof homes, install solar energy systems, and work together to gain climate resilience. So by enhancing energy efficiency, by uplifting residents and building partnerships, communities can really be powerful leaders in advancing health equity and climate resilience. So we've talked about reducing sources. Let's pivot now to thinking about supporting sinks. Specifically, land sinks are a critical component of the climate system, actively engaged in the flows of carbon, nitrogen, water, and oxygen, and we know those are the essential building blocks for life on Earth. We know that for the solutions related to land sinks, we want to shift agricultural practices. We want to protect and restore ecosystems. We want to use degraded land and address waste and diet. So what I want to do today is go to the edge of Bluffton, Georgia. It's one of the poorest counties in the United States. And in that county, Will Harris and his family have turned White Oak Pastures into one of the largest pasture-raised livestock operations in the entire country. It's a grand experiment in the deindustrialization of agriculture. So at White Oak Pastures, they support 110 employees, but those employees don't feed animals. They feed the microbes in the soil. And the microbes feed the soil feeds the plants, and the plants feed the animals, and they breed and they grow, and the animals then are turned into meat and they are sold for money to keep that whole system going. So the health of the soil is connected to the health of the community. And the healthy soil sequesters more carbon, acting as an important land-based sink, a critical climate solution. So some of the planet's most critical processes happen where the ocean and the air meet, as oceans absorb and redistribute that heat and redistribute the carbon. Both are rising, unfortunately, though, due to the glut of emissions in the atmosphere. An ambitious wetlands restoration project, is underway. And I'm going to tell you about that. And I'm also going to note here, especially for those of you who are really focused on oceans, given this call with the Ocean Project, this does not have a whole lot of solutions. That does not mean those don't exist. That means that we just hired 4 people at Project Drawdown to really expand this space. So when we talk next, hopefully this will be much more specific, because there are so many solutions in the ocean space that we haven't gotten to yet. So that's kind of our next area of exploration. So this wetlands project is in Delaware Bay, where scientists are using innovative methods to revive a badly damaged salt marsh. In the 1980s, Prime Hook Salt Marsh was converted into a freshwater impoundment system to attract more ducks, more geese, and other birds for hunters and bird watchers. Now, this restoration project is a model for restoring vital wetlands worldwide, and it takes design cues from nature to recreate a resilient ecosystem, which is an increasingly vital task as climate change threatens coastlines with rising sea levels and stronger storms. Coastal wetlands, we all know, when preserved or restored, reduce flooding and erosion better than hard infrastructures like seawalls and levees, and they sequester more carbon more efficiently than woodlands. So we have reduced sources, we have support sinks, and the third S is improve society. And improving society includes solutions that we should implement anyway, even if climate change wasn't an issue. By developing a more equitable society, we can actually help with climate change. So we know that access to high quality voluntary reproductive health care and to high quality inclusive education are fundamental human rights and cornerstones of gender equality. In more indirect ways, making strides in health and education can also benefit the climate. Climate and social systems we know are profoundly connected, and those connections open up solutions that are often overlooked. We all have a role to play in implementing climate solutions. And one way that communities have engaged people in climate action is through something called the Drawdown Eco Challenge. It's a fun and social way to take measurable action on climate. The Drawdown Eco Challenge runs year round. You can create teams, you track your progress, all while putting climate solutions into place. So we all have an opportunity and an obligation to step up and implement these climate solutions, from reducing sources, specifically focused on electricity, food, agriculture, and land use, industry, transportation, and buildings, by supporting sinks on land and in the ocean, and by improving society through healthcare and education, we can actually reach Drawdown. And I've shared a few climate solution stories with you today, and I'm sure that you have many of your own climate solution stories underway in your community. So what I ask of you is, what's next? What are you reaching towards? You know, the reality of intervening in a complex system is that no one can do it all. We all have an opening to show up as problem solvers and as change agents and contribute in significant ways, even when we feel small. So I want to end by asking you the same question we started with. What comes to mind when you think about climate change and global warming? Let's enter stuff in the chat boxes, please.
Oh my gosh, I'm like taking notes, even though I know we've had these conversations. I read the book, but I'm like, no way. I'm like, I've put all of these organizations that you were talking about, Elizabeth. Now I'm like, okay, now I have to like go look all over the internet for them and just learn. I'm so inspired. Yeah, Nicolina says you can always make a difference. Yeah. That's
Yeah,
awesome.
thanks, Nicolina. Well, and thanks, Bailey. I mean, I think there's, there are so many different solutions that are out there for us to think about. And instead of being kind of despondent and feeling down, this is what I want people to remember, right? That hopefully you've been introduced to a range of climate solutions with really diverse intervention points across individual, community, organizational, governmental, regional, national, right? Like, and all of those different scales. There are places that we can plug in, and it takes an ecosystem of activities and actors to really create and accelerate the transformation that's required. So I just want us to remember that we are really living in a dramatic time of transformation. The basic physics, chemistry, and biology of this planet make that non-negotiable. Stasis is not an option. Society has a choice to make about what shape that transformation will take. Will we employ collective courage and determination and the diversity of existing solutions to move the world towards a balance with the planet's living systems? Will we pursue climate action in ways that heal systemic injustices and foster resilience, well-being, and equality? Who will we choose to be at this pivotal moment in human history? Because together, we can leverage the solutions at hand today to build a bridge from where we are today to the world that we want for ourselves, for all life, and most importantly, for generations yet to come. A better path is still possible, so may we turn that possibility into reality. Thanks so much, everybody.
I like want to clap. That was so good. I'm like, oh my, I feel like I just watched a live TED Talk or something. That was absolutely amazing. And if you guys have, I know we are kind of running short on time, but please, please, please put your questions in the chat in Q&A. There's a couple that we have so far and that we can get to. But my first kind of question, while everyone's kind of typing and thinking through their questions, the question that I had for you is, I think a lot of us right now are having some really necessary but difficult conversations with family, with friends, with the people in our life. And I know for me, climate can be unfortunately, one of those topic points where you want, especially solutions and encouraging, everyone in your life to do both small and big actions for the future of our planet. But when you're having those conversations, what do they look like for you? How do you approach someone that maybe you've never talked to them about climate change before, or climate solutions in general? And do you have any tips for anyone watching of how to bridge that conversation in a really understanding, kind of like you were saying, bridging conversations in a really understanding and empathetic way for this, for people that this might be the first time that they are understanding this or hearing about it?
I'm going to put something in the chat because I really love Catherine Hayhoe. She is at Texas Tech, and she has worked with PBS on a series of videos called Global Weirding. Cool. And she covers a lot of that. And one of her main, one of the things she says is most important, and I absolutely agree with her, is one of the most important things all of us can do is talk about climate change, right? Because the statistics are abysmal about how infrequently we talk about climate. And if we're not talking about it, we're probably not doing anything about it, right? And so how do we have these conversations with people? And I mean, my at my core, it's to listen and be empathetic and tie into people's values and find ways that we can paint the picture of the future life on Earth that aligns together, and then we figure out how to build that. Because just throwing facts and figures at people doesn't work. We know that. There's loads of data, right? But telling stories, connecting with people on the level of values is a way that we can absolutely do that. I grew up in rural Wisconsin on a sheep farm. So being able to talk to, when I was just, when I talked to our neighbor Lawrence, who's in his mid 80s, he doesn't really understand this thing called climate, but I'll listen to him talk about the changes, and we'll just talk about, okay, well, so, what are some things you could do? Like, what could we do differently on your farm that might improve stuff? And so just, starting there instead of from a place of righteousness, which, I definitely went through my righteous phase. But I feel like there's, it's good to recognize that and kind of move beyond it.
Yeah, that's awesome. We have a couple of questions. We have one comment from Laura, who says, I've used Project Drawdown as a reference at my job as a marine science educator at an aquarium. The back pocket facts from the book I have in my mental filing cabinet have been invaluable in helping educate our guests. So
That's amazing.
I Project Drawdown, in the Drawdown review for myself as well. I've used that in so many situations. So it's cool that we have some kudos there. A couple
I
of,
just popped something else in the
oh yeah,
chat real quick, which is climateinterpreter.org. Those folks think a lot about ocean and climate change. So if you want to learn more about what they do, there's some great work there on, and that's for folks who are communicating about climate change.
oh, that's awesome. That's really cool. I'll have to check them out too. The other question we have is, how much does Project Drawdown do with students or young people?
Great question. So we are in the process of filming a whole series of climate solutions videos. Those will launch probably in time for the spring semester. It's been a little challenging, as you can imagine, with COVID, like trying to figure out how to do some film shoots and stuff like that. So that I think is going to be a great launch point for us to have some kind of foundational content, and then we can build a bunch of curricular stuff from. So we also collaborate a lot with places like the Wild Center and Climate Generation, who are leaders like the Ocean Project in communicating with teachers and with youth about climate solutions. So yeah, absolutely agree that youth are an incredibly critical audience, especially, I mean, they're inheriting the world as it is, and we need to make sure that they, one of the things, not to like belabor this too much, but I want the next generation, like, the youth have been burdened, right? But what I want to do is kind of pivot away from and I mean, it's okay to have the anger, right? But I want to turn that anger into action, right? And turn it into solutions. And that's where I'd love to see more youth activists. And I encourage all of you to be those people who are taking action and putting solutions into place, right? Like, let's actually roll up our sleeves, let's get it done. There aren't enough people, there aren't enough wind turbine installers, there aren't enough people fixing solar panels. We have such a need. If we want to scale up these solutions, we need people working in and advocating for these careers so that we can actually get this stuff done.
Yeah, and I also think, adding to that, connecting, a friend of mine, he actually worked on solar panels and had amazing just knowledge about wind turbines and renewable energy. And I'm like, oh my gosh, you're doing such great work for the future of our planet. And he's like, I just fix solar panels. Like I just like the technology. And it's like, no, these are actually mechanisms for preventing global warming. And he's like, like, had not thought about it that way. And so I think, especially, in states like Illinois, more rural, where it's, more wind power, I think a lot of there's a little bit of a disconnect in the communication about, how these things are put in place to ultimately help build infrastructure for renewable energy, and getting that renewable energy to local homes as well. So I always, to me, I'm always trying to connect the dots, because I think people have one part, and it's like there's three other parts, that kind of, I think, us as environmental communicators, science communicators, climate change communicators can kind of help fit those kind of pieces together in a lot of ways.
Bailey, I love that so much. And I think it reminds me of a story that I'm going to totally botch, but basically when we were getting ready to send people to the moon, right? JFK visited NASA, and apologies that this is not likely the very accurate, but what comes to mind is that he asked someone who was sweeping what he does at NASA, and he said, "Sir, I'm putting a man on the moon." And I just get goosebumps, because, like, yes, it takes all of us, it takes this interconnected system. We need everybody holding hands, moving together. Let's do this, right? And we've got all these different pieces that are critical for the success of this mission.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. I think a lot of times we can get lost in how much am I actually doing? Am I really moving the needle forward? When does this change happen if I'm putting so much energy in? And I think that story really encompasses, it's like we have a long haul, but every action counts for sure. We have a couple more questions, but we'll take one, and then I will show us how we can continue to chat and check out all the cool work that Project Drawdown does. But this is from Marina, and they say, because of the pandemic, we've seen a decline in carbon emissions. How do you think that will affect the project of reaching Drawdown? Just even thinking about that question, if we're seeing a decline and then life goes back to this, new normal, and whenever that happens, does that bounce back? How does that affect that kind of trajectory line that you were showing at the very beginning?
Yeah, I mean, I think, there's some conflicting data about how the emissions are actually changing with COVID. For sure, down from air travel, but air travel is actually a really small amount of transportation emissions. It's about 2%, which is kind of, I mean, it's still 2% is 2%, right? But it's not as much as I think a lot of people assume. And we're still, we're still seeing lots of manufacturing, but what we're not seeing is a whole lot of commuting, right? So that's incredible. So some of the things I hope that will come out of this is just a renewed sense. I mean, I can work in Southeast Alaska. We just moved up here last week because we said, you know what, we're working remotely. Let's go live in an incredible place where our kids can have a new experience and have an adventure year. And I'm really privileged to be able to do that. And I hope that other people will have similar opportunities where we can be telepresent, right? So we don't have to be commuting. Before that, I was spending, a lot of time on public transit getting to and from a physical location that I actually don't need to work in. So I hope that, any dip in emissions is great, and especially as it can be sustained long term. And that's what I hope the pandemic, while we never, want a pandemic to be the reason that we're reducing greenhouse gas emissions, hopefully we can start to really shift people's thinking and shift the culture so that so that we can come up with this new normal that is much more sustainable and much more focused on climate solutions.
Yeah, I know. Even just talking with friends and family, I think what the pandemic has done is renewed a lot of our love for just the very basics of why we want to protect our planet. The missing going outside and seeing and appreciating nature, even just the fundamentals of finding that connection again to nature, I think it's something that I think will come out of the pandemic, and I hope stays, because in order to love something, you have to protect it. And so these favorite places of yours, the places that you just can't wait to get back to, when we can, we have to protect them. When we can go see them and, spend time there with our family again. But I did want to share, I know we are like coming down to the final minutes. I wanted to share our contact info with you all. Look how awesome we are, this dynamic duo here. So please, 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 I can't thank Dr. Bagley enough for being here with us. I know that this is a really crazy time for everyone, with going back to school, maybe trying to find jobs, moving to Alaska. This is just a really awesome but crazy time for everyone. So I just can't thank you enough for everyone spending your Wednesday evenings / days with us. Please continue, check out the amazing work at Project Drawdown. Drawdown.org is their website where you can find amazing free content. I was just kind of looking through everything before we started today, and I was like, oh my gosh, I've spent 3 hours on this website. What am I doing? But I promise you it's worth it. You will get a boatload of information that you will use in your back pocket in so many random situations like I've found. I did want to point out 2 little QR codes, one in the left and one in the right. The one in the right is to learn more about Project Drawdown. So if you don't know how those QR codes work, just take your phone, act like you're taking a picture of it, and their website will pop up. So definitely give them a look, a check out, and see when these awesome videos are coming out, hopefully in the spring semester. The other thing I did want to flag is that the World Oceans Day Youth Advisory Council is open for applications for young people 16 to 24. We're looking for anyone around the globe who is passionate about ocean conservation, who is looking to take their leadership to the next level and really kind of put a lot of these practices into place, get back to the root of protecting our planet. As always, please, please, please let me know if you have any questions, comments, concerns. If you have a host in mind that you're like, Bailey, you have to talk to this person, email me, DM me on Instagram. I want to hear from you guys, what topics you want to hear from next. This is one I just particularly wanted to hear, and I hope you guys were able to, definitely learn something, but enjoy it as much as I have. With that, thank you again so much. I can't wait to see your adventures in Alaska, but I also can't wait to see kind of how this learning journey takes us as we all kind of continue towards the path of making change and making our planet a better place. You guys always remember, you are brilliant and the earth is hiring. It's not going to send you limos, but it'll send you some beautiful stuff. So don't ever forget that it's not impossible. Figure out if it's impossible, right? Like Paul Hawken said, figure out if it's impossible after you're done. Don't give up. Continue fighting for this beautiful planet we all share. I promise you, it'll be worth it. Our planet thanks you. I thank you. But I hope you guys have a great rest of your weeks. Have a great rest of your August. Where did the summer go? But yeah, thanks again for tuning in. Thank you so much, Elizabeth. You're so awesome. This is like a TED Talk and a half. So you're great. But thanks everybody. Have great nights. Have great days.